The Zerth Empire did not fear ghosts. They did not fear myths, nor legends, nor bedtime stories meant to frighten hatchlings. And humans? They were all three. The Empire had purged them centuries ago, wiping Earth from the galactic maps, erasing their history, their people, their very existence. What remained of humanity had vanished into extinction. At least, that was what Selara Voss had been taught. Then she met one, and he cut her squad down like they were nothing. Selara's breathing was steady, but her heart's hammered in her chest. The jungle moon of Draken-IV pulsed with heat, the massive alien trees stretching high into the sky, their bioluminescent veins illuminating the darkness in faint blue light. The mission had been routine: eliminate rebel forces, secure the sector, move on. But her squad was already dead. They had been hunted, not by a rebel army, by one man. Selara pressed her back against a thick tree trunk, her pulse rifle cradled tightly against her chest. The comms had gone silent minutes ago. One by one, her team had vanished into the jungle. No screams, no warning shots, just gone. Her visor flickered with data, motion signatures that didn't match any known species. No, that wasn't right. The pattern was familiar, but it was impossible. Then a voice came through her neural link, hijacking her encrypted comms. "You're the last one left, Zerth." A shiver ran down Selara's spine. The voice was deep, calm, inhuman in its confidence. It was him, the ghost, the thing that shouldn't exist. "Step out and face me," the voice continued, "or hide and die like the rest." Selara tightened her grip on her rifle. She had been trained for war her entire life. She had fought rebels, assassins, elite mercenaries. But right now, she was afraid. She moved. Her training kicked in, and she fired, a 3-round burst aimed at his silhouette. He was fast, faster than anything she had ever seen. The figure moved in a blur, twisting between the glowing trees. Her rounds hit nothing but air, and then he was in front of her. Before she could react, a boot slammed into her chest. Selara crashed into the dirt, the impact sending a sharp pain through her ribs. Her rifle was gone. He had kicked it away before she even registered the movement. The human stood over her, tall, broad-shouldered, armored, but lightly. His gear was battered and mismatched, not Empire-made, but pieced together from scavenged Zerth technology. A long black combat knife gleamed in his grip, reflecting the jungle's pale glow. His face was shadowed by his helmet, but she could feel his eyes studying her, calculating. He wasn't going to kill her. Not yet. And that terrified her more than anything. She braced herself, expecting a blade to the throat. Instead, he stepped back, lowered his knife, and turned away. Selara's breath caught in her chest. What was he doing? She was his enemy. He had no reason to spare her. "You're lucky," he said without looking back. "They lied to you." Selara forced herself to her feet, hands shaking. "What are you talking about?" The human, this ghost of a dead species, tilted his head slightly. "The war didn't end. You just never saw the truth." And then he was gone, vanishing into the jungle like he had never been there, leaving Selara standing alone in the ruins of her squad. And for the first time in her life, she questioned everything. When she returned to the command ship, bruised and shaken, she gave her debrief. She did not mention the human, because she knew what would happen if she did. Her superiors would erase her report. Her own commanders would silence her, because the Empire did not fear ghosts, and that was their greatest mistake, because he was real. And if one human had survived, there were more. Selara has seen the impossible. She has met the myth that wasn't supposed to exist. And now, the first crack in the Empire's lie has formed. But this is only the beginning. Selara had always believed in the Empire. She had trained for it, fought for it, bled for it. But now, for the first time in her life, she was lying to it. She left one detail out of her report: a human, a ghost. And in doing so, she had made a choice, even if she didn't realize it yet. 2 weeks later, she was deployed again. Different world, same orders: crush the rebellion, secure the sector. The war had been dragging on for years now, but it was never spoken of in those terms. The Empire called it stabilization. The resistance was dismissed as fringe insurgents. She had accepted that. Until now. Now she couldn't stop wondering. What if this wasn't a war to protect the Empire? What if it was a war to keep something buried? But she didn't have time to chase ghosts. Not when her squad's next mission was hunting a rogue war mech. It was supposed to be a simple retrieval. The Empire's experimental war mechs were state-of-the-art, fully autonomous combat platforms. But one had gone missing. Its AI malfunctioning. Its last known location deep in a war zone. Selara's squad was sent in to disable it before it could cause damage. But the moment they entered the ruined city where it had gone dark, she knew something was wrong. The buildings were scarred with plasma burns, the streets littered with destroyed Zerth armor. Something had already fought here, and it wasn't the rebels. Her comms crackled. "Squad 3 is down. We have..." Static. Then, a new voice came through. One that didn't belong to the Empire. "You should leave." Selara froze. The voice was deep, calm, familiar. It was him, Reid Hunter. Before she could respond, the ground shook. A deafening metallic roar tore through the ruins as the war mech emerged, its massive form moving with a speed that should have been impossible for something that size. Its weapons whirred to life, targeting both Zerth and rebel forces alike. It didn't care who the enemy was. It was going to kill everyone. Selara barely had time to move before the mech opened fire. Her squad scattered, those who hadn't already been cut down in the first volley. She took cover, her mind racing. She had fought war mechs before, but this one was different, faster, smarter, unpredictable. And then, through the smoke and chaos, she saw him. Reid. The human was moving, fluid, efficient, deadly. He wasn't running from the mech, he was hunting it. And that's when she realized he knew something she didn't. Reid moved with purpose, dodging plasma fire, scaling a collapsed tower to get above the mech. Selara's instincts screamed at her to fight him. Instead, she did something she never thought she would. She ran toward him. She didn't understand why. Not yet. But something told her if anyone knew how to destroy that mech, it was him. He saw her coming but didn't raise his weapon. He just sighed. "Figured you'd show up." She glared. "What the hell is happening?" Reid didn't answer immediately. His gaze was fixed on the war machine below. "That mech," he finally said. "It was never supposed to be here. That didn't make sense. It's Empire tech." "Yeah," he said, "and that should scare you more than me." Selara had a choice. She could try to kill him, or she could listen. For the second time, she made a choice that should have been impossible. She chose to trust the human. "You know how to take it down?" she asked. He grinned. "I have an idea." She wasn't sure what was more terrifying, the war mech, or the fact that she was starting to believe him. They fought together. For the first time, Zerth and humans side by side. The mech was fast, but Reid was faster. Selara covered him, drawing its fire while he set the trap. A coordinated strike, a perfectly timed detonation. The mech fell. But before they could celebrate, the Empire arrived. Not to save her, not to retrieve the mech. They came to kill them both. Selara watched in horror as her own people opened fire on her. Reid dragged her into cover before the plasma barrage could vaporize her where she stood. "They're trying to kill you too, Zerth." She wanted to deny it. She wanted to believe this was a misunderstanding. But she had seen it in the reports. She had seen it in the war zones. And now, she was seeing it firsthand. This wasn't about stopping a rogue machine. This was about eliminating anyone who knew too much. And that meant her. Her comms crackled with a new message. One meant for every Empire soldier in the system. A direct order. "Eliminate Selara Voss. She has been compromised." Her own people had just marked her for death. She turned to Reid, heart pounding. "What the hell is going on?" Reid stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled a small device from his belt and tossed it to her. It was a data drive. The truth was inside. "See for yourself. Selara has been betrayed. Her own empire wants her dead. And now, she holds a data drive that could change everything." Selara had been a soldier all her life. She had followed orders. She had obeyed without question. She had never doubted the Empire. Until now. Now, she was marked for death by her own people. Now, she held in her hands the one thing the Empire never wanted anyone to see. The truth. The small device in her palm felt heavier than any weapon she had ever carried. Reid had given it to her without a word. She could still hear the sounds of battle fading behind them as they escaped into the wilderness. Two fugitives, an impossible alliance. She wanted to demand answers, but she knew that there was only one thing to do. She plugged the drive into her wrist-mounted interface, and the screen came to life. The first image froze her blood. A world, burning. Not just any world. Earth. Not a battlefield. Not a war zone. A slaughter. She scrolled through classified reports, each one worse than the last. She had been taught that humans had been wiped out in war, that the Zerth had fought them and won. But these documents told a different story. It wasn't a war. It was genocide. Entire cities were erased from orbit. Survivors were hunted down like animals. Their technology was stolen, their culture buried, their existence erased. Her stomach turned as she saw experiment logs. Captured humans had been tested on, dissected, their biology torn apart and repurposed into the very weapons the Empire now used, including the rogue war mech they had just destroyed. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Everything she had been raised to believe, everything she had fought for, it was all a lie. Selara turned to Reid, her mind racing. "How long have you known?" she demanded. Reid leaned back against a fallen tree, his expression unreadable. "Since the beginning." His voice was quiet, not angry, not gloating, just tired. She clenched her fists. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Would you have believed me?" She wanted to say yes, but she couldn't, because she knew he was right. The Empire had trained them from birth to believe humans were monsters. And yet, the only monsters she had seen were her own people. The data drive sealed her fate. The moment she had seen it, she had crossed the line. Her own empire had already branded her a traitor. Now there was no turning back, and that meant she had one choice left. Expose the truth. Reid led her to a hidden outpost, buried deep in the wreckage of an old battlefield. "This is where we make our stand," he said. A battered communication array hummed to life, linking to a black market frequency. Selara hesitated. The moment she sent this message, the Empire would stop at nothing to kill her. She took a deep breath. Then she pressed send, and the galaxy saw the truth. The response was immediate. The broadcast spread across every system, every colony. The galaxy watched in horror as the evidence played out in real time. The Zerth Empire had lied to them all. And in that moment, something broke. Across the Empire, soldiers defected. Rebels rose up. Allies turned against them. The invincible war machine of the Empire began to fracture. And in the center of it all, a Zerth warrior who had once been loyal, and a human who had never stopped fighting. Together, they had lit the spark. Now, the war was truly beginning. Selara and Reid have exposed the Empire's greatest secret. The galaxy is turning against the Zerth, but now, the Empire will unleash everything to stop them. Selara and Reid had done the impossible. The truth had been broadcast. The galaxy was listening. The Empire was breaking. But the Zerth were not going to fall quietly. Because the moment the message went out, the Empire responded. And now, they were coming for blood. Selara barely had time to breathe before the first orbital strike hit. The hidden outpost they had used to send the transmission exploded into fire and dust, the shockwave tearing through the surrounding battlefield. Reid grabbed her arm, pulling her to cover as the ground shook beneath them. "They're going to wipe this place clean," he growled. Selara's mind raced. The Empire wasn't trying to capture them. They were trying to erase them, just like they had done to Earth, just like they had done to every human who had ever fought back. This wasn't just a counterattack, it was extermination. They ran, dodging gunfire and debris, slipping through the ruins of old battlefields, the air thick with smoke and static. Above them, Zerth warships circled like vultures, scanning for survivors. Every Zerth soldier in the sector had one order: kill Selara Voss and Reid Hunter. No trial, no capture, no hesitation. Kill them. Selara and Reid reached a crashed dropship, its hull scorched, but its engines still humming faintly. Reid immediately started rewiring the controls, his fingers moving fast over the ancient circuitry. Selara stood at the entrance, rifle raised. She had spent her life fighting for the Empire. Now, she was fighting against it. And she wasn't about to die here. The first squad of Zerth soldiers appeared on the ridge above them. They opened fire. Selara fired back. She wasn't running anymore. She was done running. "I need 30 more seconds," Reid shouted from the cockpit. Selara held the line. She moved faster than she ever had before, adrenaline and instinct taking over. But there were too many. She took a hit to the shoulder, armor cracked, blood spilling down her arm. Another shot clipped her leg, sending her to a knee. She braced for the final strike. But it never came, because Reid had finished. "Get in," he roared. Selara didn't hesitate. She threw herself into the ship as Reid slammed the thrusters to max. The ship lurched violently into the sky, dodging plasma fire as they shot into the atmosphere. They were escaping, but barely. As they reached the outer orbit, the real horror began. A massive Zerth war fleet had arrived, hundreds of warships, thousands of fighters. And at the center of it all, a colossal dreadnought, its hull glowing with planet-cracking weapons. Selara's heart sank. She had read the classified reports. She knew what this was. Operation Titanfall had begun. "They're not just coming for us," Selara whispered, realization hitting her like ice. Reid's jaw tightened. "No, they're coming to finish what they started." Operation Titanfall wasn't about hunting them down. It was about wiping out every last trace of humanity. Anywhere humans had survived. Anywhere the truth had spread. Any system that dared question the Empire. All of them. Gone. This was the final purge. Selara and Reid had one chance. One insane, impossible chance. They needed to get to the capital. They needed to show the Galactic Council the war fleet in real time. The Empire could deny the truth all it wanted, but they couldn't hide mass genocide. "You're saying we need to fly straight into Zerth space?" Reid said, raising an eyebrow. Selara exhaled. "Yes," he smirked. "Finally. a plan I actually like. Operation Titanfall has begun. The Empire is burning entire civilizations to hide the truth. Selara and Reid have one chance to stop it, but it means flying straight into the heart of enemy territory. The Zerth Empire had finally revealed its true face. They weren't just hunting Selara and Reid, they were erasing entire worlds. Operation Titanfall had begun, and Selara Voss was done running. If the Empire wanted to wipe out the truth, she was going to shove it down their throats. This was it. The final mission. Selara's hands were steady on the controls. Her stolen dropship hurtled toward Zerth Prime, the capital of the Empire, the most heavily fortified planet in the galaxy. A suicide run. But she wasn't doing it alone. Reid stood behind her, double-checking his weapons. He wasn't afraid. "You sure about this?" he asked, smirking. Selara glanced at him. "Not even a little." Reid grinned. "Good. That means we have a chance." Their goal wasn't to fight the entire Zerth fleet. It was to reach the Council, to expose the genocide in real time, to make sure the entire galaxy saw the Empire for what it really was. But first, they had to survive getting there. The Zerth fleet filled the sky, a wall of destruction. Their capital ships moved in perfect formation, their weapons primed. Selara's stolen ship was already tagged as a rogue vessel. If they got too close, they'd be obliterated. Which meant one thing. They had to crash. Selara gunned the thrusters, weaving through the debris field of a burning colony ship. Alarms blared. Enemy fighters locked onto them. And then, Reid jumped. He launched himself out of the dropship, a grapple line snapping onto the hull of a nearby Zerth warcruiser. Selara barely had time to register it before he disappeared into the ship's superstructure. She cursed. Crazy bastard. Then she slammed the ship downward, straight toward the capital. She wasn't going to win this fight, but she didn't need to. She just needed to get the message out. Selara's ship crashed through the outer defense ring of Zerth Prime, skidding across the landing platform in a trail of fire. She crawled from the wreckage, ignoring the pain in her ribs. She wasn't here to fight. She was here to finish this. She staggered toward the broadcast tower, the Empire's main communication relay. If she could reach it, she could override the security feed. She could make sure every system, every world, every species saw what the Empire was doing. The truth. She ran. The guards were already coming for her. She could hear weapons charging. She could feel the heat of plasma fire scorching the air. And then, the entire tower exploded. Selara ducked as debris rained down. And from the smoke, Reid Hunter emerged, covered in blood, armor scorched, holding the stolen command codes in his hand. "Hope you didn't start without me." Selara laughed. Then she grabbed the codes and sent the truth to the entire galaxy. The broadcast went live. Every screen, every ship, every station. They saw the war fleet. They saw the burning cities. They saw the millions already dead. And they saw Selara Voss, once a soldier of the Empire, standing beside the last human warrior, telling them the truth. The Zerth Empire had committed genocide, and now they were trying to do it again. The response was immediate. Allies turned against the Empire. Rebellions ignited. Even Zerth loyalists began to defect. The Empire collapsed under its own weight. And as the Galactic Council forces descended, the last remnants of the Zerth fleet broke apart. The war was over. The lie was dead. Selara and Reid fought their way to the extraction point. They had won. But the Empire wasn't done with them yet. The last remaining Zerth warlords weren't going down without a fight. Selara was hit first. A plasma round tore through her armor, sending her sprawling. Reid kept fighting, taking out enemy after enemy, until the explosion. The last warlord, realizing he had lost, triggered a self-destruct. Selara barely had time to reach out for Reid before the blast consumed them both. She woke up weeks later on a resistance warship. She had survived. The Empire was gone. The war was over. But when she asked about Reid, no one had seen him. She felt her heart sink. He had saved her. He had sacrificed himself so she could live. And now, he was gone. She wasn't sure what hurt more, losing a friend or knowing that he had never even asked for thanks. But then, the door opened, and there he was, bruised, scarred, alive. Selara stared at him, speechless. "You didn't think I'd let you have all the fun, did you?" She punched him in the arm. He winced. She laughed. And for the first time since this war began, she felt something close to hope. The Zerth Empire was gone, but the galaxy was still broken. There were power vacuums, old enemies waiting in the shadows, and Selara Voss and Reid Hunter. They weren't done fighting. Not yet. Not ever. They weren't just warriors anymore. They were best friends. And together, they were going to fix this galaxy, one battle at a time. The war is over, but the fight continues. Selara and Reid didn't just survive. They changed the course of history. And now, they're just getting started.